and welcome to The Voices of Women, sponsored by the Bristol County Commission on the Status of Women. I am your host, Gail Fortes, Executive Director of the YWCA Southeastern Massachusetts. And today we are going to speak about the Massachusetts Advocacy Day that's coming up at the State House in Boston in May. So we are really excited to get everyone ready to go up and advocate for issues important to women and families in our community. So today we have three wonderful guests that are going to tell you about the legislative issues that we'll be speaking with our representatives at Boston about, as well as how to get involved and how to sign up and get on the bus with us to go up to Boston next month. So I'd like to introduce our panel. Erica, we'll start with you. Just your name and a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thank you, Gail. My name is Erica Scott Pacheco, and I'm a Fall River resident, and I'm also on the Commission on the Status of Women in Bristol County. It's one of 11 regional commissions in our state. In addition, there's the overall Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women. So I'm happy to be here.
Great, thank you for being here.
Hi, Gail. I'm Jordan Latham, and I work at the YWCA, and I also live in Rochester and serve on the Plymouth County Commission on the Status of Women.
Thank you.
And I'm Val Bassett, and I head the Women's Fund of Southeastern Massachusetts. And for the last 5 years, we've been partnering with the Bristol County Commission on the Status of Women and the YWCA and other groups to mobilize women and students from the region to go to the State House and take action that benefits women in our region.
Great. Well, thank you again all for being here to talk about this issue. I mean, this is the Bristol County show that we're talking about, so it's great to really get everybody engaged in the advocacy work that all of us do in different forms, but come together for this really important day to go to Boston and speak with our legislators about that. So Erica, can you tell us a little bit more details about the Massachusetts Commission, how long ago it started and why they started and what their purpose is at the state level?
Sure. I'm not sure exactly when it started, about 20 years ago?
It's been a while, maybe something close to that, maybe 15 to 20 years ago.
Yeah, so it started because there was no task force tasked with advocating, making policy recommendations for issues affecting women, girls, and families here in our state. And so some other states had commissions like this, and thanks to the leadership of the original founders, they got the commission established. There's some other similar commissions. I previously was on the LGBTQ Youth Commission, and the idea is that women and girls face issues throughout our Commonwealth. Some of them are similar, some of them are different. And so I really like the format with the regional commissions, where there's also about 10 town commissions, town and city commissions as well, primarily in cities like in Boston, Cambridge, and larger cities. And so it really gives a multi-tiered approach to be able to elevate women's concerns and ultimately make policy recommendations like Women's Advocacy Day, so that all of the women, girls, and our whole community can go to the State House and talk about the supports that we need to make sure that we have equality in our Commonwealth.
No, it's really great. I'm one of the founding members for the Bristol County chair of commissions, and I mean, unfortunately we had to do all the work to get it up and running and didn't get to do some of this exciting work that the commission is doing now, but it's great to see that all of the work was well worth it to get it up and running, instead of the fun stuff of doing things like bylaws and and training commissioners. But it's really great to have you there, and you've been on about a year now for the Bristol County
Commission? About a year. It's been really wonderful. And for instance, in a major event that we had recently was we brought down a speaker, Mia Johnson, who's a friend of mine, and she is an Indigenous activist with the Restaurant Opportunities United organizing group, the Boston chapter. So during the third anniversary now of the Women's March here in New Bedford, a lot of groups came together, and what we as the Bristol County Commission did was we sponsored an event talking about the issues affecting women in the restaurant industry, because we already know that in all sectors of employment, women do not make the same on the dollar. Native women, Latino women, Black women also make less than white women on the dollar. But the restaurant industry is a particular problem because about 70% of restaurant workers are women. So women are already very overrepresented, with the tipped wage being kind of the format, the way that women are compensated, and all restaurant workers, they don't make minimum wage. And so we already have women at a disadvantage. We have women overrepresented in this industry, and we have a lot of issues in the restaurant industry, such as sexual harassment, women being discriminated against and afraid of retribution from their employers, and really working to put food on maybe my table, your table, on the people that they're serving, and then to put food on their family's table, and facing these challenging issues that make it really a hot topic right now. And so Mia came down all the way from Boston and spoke with us, and that was a really great part of the Weekend of Women here in New Bedford, to talk about really an intersecting issue around Me Too, sexual harassment and assault, and income inequality, and how we need legislation to better protect our restaurant workers and women in the restaurant industry.
You know, that's really great and great information to share. So thank you and the Bristol County Commission for doing that. Great. Jordan, tell us a little bit about what the Plymouth Commission is doing.
So the Plymouth Commission was actually formed less than a year ago. The legislation was passed last year, so now each county in the state of Massachusetts has their own regional commission.
Right.
So with the Plymouth County Commission, we meet, we were sworn in last July, and we meet monthly, and we actually have our big event coming up next week, next Wednesday, April 24th, which will be our first public hearing. And so this is the opportunity for women, men, women, girls, families, anyone who lives in Plymouth County to come to the public library. And there we're going to have a small group discussion format and a large group discussion format to allow people to share with us the issues that affect the lives of women, children, girls, families. And then we as a commission come together and assess our quantitative and qualitative data to then put forth policy recommendations to the Mass Commission and the Women's Political Caucus. So we're really excited to finally do it. And we're excited too because this was the first year that we were giving grant money, so we are now able to address barriers to access for women to attend these types of public hearings. So we will be offering free childcare on site by students who are actually in the early childhood education program at Plymouth South.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
they're
That's great.
partnering, and they will be offering childcare, and they will be paid $20 an hour to do this.
Nice.
And I'll be bringing both my kids. And we're also offering free transportation. So women can or anyone can reach out to us, and we will set up taxi service for them to get to and from, because we really want to address barriers to access, and there'll also be refreshments. So yeah, we hope people come out and join if they live in Plymouth County.
Oh, great. Nice to see that. We finally have a commission in every area of the state. It only took almost 20 years to get that happen, but it's wonderful. And they're all so different, all the counties, but a lot of the issues are similar too at the same time. So that's great to hear.
And a few are regional. It's
right.
there's Eastern region that I think is part of Suffolk County, right? So it's not just every county.
Funny.
A few of them are at a slightly different level.
Oh, I see.
Right.
Okay,
And
wonderful.
we actually, in Plymouth County, we were part of the regional hearing in the fall at Brockton. And that was put on by the Brockton Women's Commission. So kind of speaking to Erica's point that some local, Brockton has its own commission, right? And then we as a region were able to participate, and then the state commission came down too. So
nice.
yeah, just a lot of different layers going on.
Good, wonderful.
Yeah.
So Val, at the Women's Fund, a lot of exciting things, are going on and coming up. And I know we've talked about the blueprint, before, and how this all ties into the advocacy work that not only you do at the Women's Fund, but that all of us, do. So can you talk a little bit about where we are
Sure.
now with that?
So for a quick summary for those of you who aren't familiar with our economic blueprint for women, it's really a regional plan for how do we bring greater economic equity for all women and girls in the region. And it was developed collaboratively with about 40 organizations, individuals representing different organizations. And over the course of a couple years, we looked at data, we brought in experts, we looked at other national and statewide efforts to promote equity for women, and especially those that focused on economic issues. And at the end came up with recommendations and an action plan. And so you can see more about those on our website at womensfundsema.org. But there are a couple in particular I would want to point to. One that we came to, which underlies what we're talking about, is the need for more women, especially more women across race and class and country of origin, to have more leadership roles, more decision-making power, whether it's as an advocate, leading an organization, or being elected to office. So that underlying a lot of the solutions is women's leadership, and in particular, women's leadership representing economic inequity, representing women who are facing some of these challenges we're talking about. So our involvement in Women's Advocacy Day and in supporting efforts for more women and girls to develop leadership and political power is really about moving forward a much bigger agenda and having women determine what's best for us, determine our course.
Sure.
And we know that when women are elected, they focus more on policies that benefit women and girls at the municipal level, at the state level, and so on, and for countries that have done it at the national level. So we use this blueprint, economic blueprint for women, as a framework now for our grant making. And Erica's actually on our Social Change Investment Committee, which is our grant making committee. And so that is composed of women around the region who come together and look at how can we fund efforts that move forward these blueprint priorities, like promoting women's leadership. Like another big one that came up in every working group was around childcare access. So we'll talk more about that in a little bit. And so we're delighted and honored to recently be able to support the YWCA with a grant to create a brand new position that's really part of building a much larger pipeline and capacity to support women's advocacy, women running for office, women making change, and that's creating this development advocacy coordinator position at the YWCA. So we're very excited to be able to support that.
We are too.
And because that's really what it is, strengthening the organizations doing this work, bringing advocacy skills more into the center of it, so we can build more leaders to make these policies.
Absolutely. No, we're very excited. This is something that we've wanted to do for a long time. Unfortunately, we haven't had the resources to be able to do that, and sometimes advocacy, gets pushed to the back burner, or it's a thought to do afterwards because you're so busy with the day-to-day. But the more work that we've been doing over the last several years, the more that we realize that we really need a dedicated staff person that can actually work on this. So we're really excited and grateful for the Women's Fund for recognizing that and seeing the need for that in our community and in our region, and hopefully that we can expand this role. We're looking to hire someone soon, but Jordan can speak a little bit to more of what this role will be doing, going forward, and then we'll talk about their first big effort with Jordan's support and my support, which will be the Advocacy Day coming up.
And one thing I just want to say is that people may not be aware that not many foundations and philanthropies support advocacy.
Absolutely.
That's right.
So that's part of why it's very hard to do, and a lot of nonprofits are afraid to do it, but it's totally legal to do within certain bounds. And it's really important for creating the kind of world that matches our visions and our mission statements.
Exactly.
So support the Women's Fund, support the YWCA, support organizations that are doing advocacy, and foundations that are funding it, because there's not many.
Right. No, because we have tried for many times, and we're always very conscientious of that and careful of that. We are not lobbying. We are not doing certain things because we cannot put ourselves in jeopardy either, our nonprofit status. So it's an interesting concept, but to get
lobby,
people
just
to
not support a particular
we're not supporting candidates and that type of thing. So so we know our boundaries, when it comes to that, but we're really excited about that. So Jordan, can you talk a little bit more about
Well,
that?
I think so much too of what we're talking about is a way that this is now will be my third year going to the State House, and you always meet new people in the process, and you're always thinking, how are we organizing all these people? So part of this position is to really build our coalition and manage that coalition and keep it at that local level too, right, of building a woman or an alliance of organizations that support women and girls. But we can expand the work that I'm doing in Plymouth County and the work you're doing in Fall River and just like across southeastern Massachusetts. There's so many more organizations to tap that we haven't had the capacity to do. So I think this really creates an exciting opportunity to make more connections and to, model best practices, to learn from each other, to collaborate going forward, and then think about other exciting grant opportunities once we have those partnerships in place. And a big part of the job too, obviously, is organizing the public support and these organizations around our advocacy agenda. So doing the legislative priority work more than just on Women's Advocacy Day, right? This needs to continue all year long, and not just be a day where politicians pay lip service to us, but to remind them that they do work for us, and we have we have legislative priorities that are very important to women, children, and families in our area. So I'm really excited for this new position. Thank you. This is just so exciting to build capacity.
No, it's really
99%
built on
of it.
that premise of, we have Advocacy Day, we get all the build up before, we do the event, we send a thank you, do your phone calls, et cetera, and then what happens for the next 9 months of the year.
Right.
You have to
So
organize.
we have to organize. So that's what we looked at is, what's the long term, like you said before, and how can we build the capacity? How does, people that have come 3 or 4 years now can build up their leadership skills, can lead a group, can speak on their own, can do more, as well. So I think that's what we're excited about.
And engage them in events throughout the year.
Exactly,
Absolutely.
not just what we're doing, what you're doing, what Women's Fund is doing, as well, because we even saw that at the last event that we did, that people want to be engaged a little bit more, and they have the choices. They know what's going on, and they can choose, pick and choose of what to participate in. But it's not just that one shot deal, kind of thing. And how are we doing that? How are we doing that locally with our representatives in their home office too? And we want to be able to do that and more programs. So it's really, really exciting to have. So Advocacy Day. So I know we have an agenda, and there's many topics that we've all talked about many times, but I think we've narrowed it down that we're just going to talk about a couple today. But there are, I'm sure, many more that we could talk about that we would like to advocate for. But we did prioritize this. So we'll start with Erica. One of the issues.
One of the big issues that we're going to be talking about at Advocacy Day is an act supporting parents running for public office. SD 304 on the Senate side and HD 530 on the House side. And thanks to Senator Jalen and Representatives Connolly and Machino for their leadership. So this is a really important bill. We got close to passing it last year. The Senate passed it, but then when they were reconciling the House and the Senate sides of the bill, in that final process, it didn't make the final cut. So that was disappointing, but I think this year, with your support, the viewers watching, the folks that were going to get on the bus, the people the advocacy coordinator are rallying, I think we're going to get a win this year. This is a really important bill because right now, if you have an official campaign account through the Office of Campaign and Political Finance, or OCPF, you can use that money to pay to dry clean your tuxedo, but you cannot use that money to pay for childcare if you're a candidate, male or female, regardless of your gender. A candidate right now cannot use their campaign funding to pay for childcare if they're going door to door talking to voters, if they're attending a community event, if they're putting on a fundraiser, all of those really basic things you need to do to run for office, which I think, having been a candidate, I was a candidate for mayor in the recent fall over recall election. Those things are a lot more important than dry cleaning. But the way that the law is right now, dry cleaning is an allowable expense of a tuxedo, which frankly, I don't think most political candidates even need to wear a tuxedo. There's not a lot of events that require that.
Say, what are they going to that they need that they wear in a
But that's
tuxedo
an
that I've seen.
allowable expense with campaign donations. Childcare is not. Now, on the federal level, it is allowable. Federal candidates can and do, especially younger candidates, women candidates who are likely to have younger children, be taking on a lot of responsibility for childcare. So this is an issue I think is so critical for us in Massachusetts, for local, municipal level, and for statewide level candidates to be able to use their campaign funding. It doesn't mean they have to, it just gives them the choice to be able to do it legally. Right now, OCPF has said it's unclear. They've said, based on the statute, they don't know if it's actually allowable or if it's prohibited. So for that reason, they advise people not to do it. Just to be safe, don't do it. So that's why we really need to pass this bill. I think it will be a big help for candidates. I myself do not have children, but I had many campaign members on my team who have kids, and a priority that I set for myself is that all of my events were kid-friendly. But I know that parents know their kids, right? And so sometimes parents don't feel comfortable bringing their kids, or the kids don't, frankly, are too young, or they don't want to sit through a boring event. And there's other times when you're talking to voters, you simply cannot, if you're the candidate with children, you cannot take care of your children. You need help. And this bill will help ensure equity so that working class candidates like myself don't have to worry, because I don't want to have any barriers. Running for office is really hard and challenging, and paying for childcare should not be a barrier. So I hope that everyone becomes a strong advocate for this.
No, thank you for educating all of us, on that's really, really, important.
Especially when you learn that you can pay for dry cleaning, which was a surprise to me.
Yeah.
Of a tuxedo.
There is.
Make the difference about whether you're there
Or
or
not.
not, whether you can be somewhere or not. Versus
Exactly.
How spiffy
Whether
you
you
look.
will run,
Right.
right?
That's
It's
right. Right.
Childcare is
Whether
already
you
so
run,
expensive.
and then how effective your campaign
Sure.
is,
Yep.
and your
Right.
accessibility to voters, all of
Right.
those things are really wrapped up in childcare. So if somebody wants to fundraise for it and pay for it,
I
we
know.
should let them do it.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Great. So thank you for letting us know about that. So that's the first
Very.
one that we want everybody to know about. So
Yeah.
since we talked a little bit about childcare, why don't we
Yeah.
add on a
Yeah.
little bit more?
Well, as I
Val?
mentioned before, in the working group on the task force on pathways to a living wage for women, one of the big issues that came up was the need for childcare, for all women,
All
but
women,
in
yeah.
particular in this region, for a couple of reasons. For actually 3 reasons. One is that this region, because compared to the rest of the state, has a lower income level, relies much more on public childcare. So that means a couple things. One, that the childcare centers are more strapped for money because they only get the money that the state reimburses them, or that's a much higher percentage of their funding. And so the state rules really affect about what's reimbursed, really affect what they're able to pay teachers, how much they're able to fix up their facilities, what kind of care they can offer. 2, that also shows us that affordable childcare is a critical issue, and that we know that of the families who are the women who are income eligible for state-funded childcare, there's a very long wait list. So there are a lot of women in this region who are eligible but not receiving the child care that they are eligible for because the state doesn't fully fund the needed child care. Another is that women have children younger in this region compared to other parts of the state, and we do have one of the highest teen pregnancy rates as well. And so you have issues of young women trying to get an education and being earlier in their careers as parents. And we know there are a lot of barriers, going to school while you're trying to deal with parenting. There's not adequate childcare facilities at the regional higher education institutions, and it's a huge challenge. So the needs of parenting students are very big in this region, and the needs around childcare to go to work. And then finally, we have a lot of children growing up in households headed by women who are the sole breadwinner. And so obviously all the issues around women's earning power and economic access, as well as how dependent they are on help for childcare, whether it's going to a family daycare center, whether it's extended family and friends, but the infrastructure is not strong enough in terms of their access to childcare to work, to go to school, to get the kind of education they need to move up the economic ladder. So it's a huge issue for this region, and we have all historically supported on Women's Advocacy Day something called Universal Pre-Kindergarten, and in particular focusing on funding it in gateway cities. And Fall River and New Bedford have both received grants from the state to do planning, and now there's a movement to advocate the state to fully fund implementing the plan in all of the communities that have a plan for universal pre-kindergarten. And universal pre-kindergarten really means that you are moving the public school system down to younger children. So that right now, individuals are privately responsible for patching together childcare until their kid is old enough to go to kindergarten usually. There's some slots for 4-year-old, maybe 3.9. But universal pre-K is the idea that every child from 3.9 up would have publicly funded education and care. There's a broader effort, a movement this year for legislation to really push universal childcare even farther than that. Led by Raise Up Massachusetts, and they're finalizing the policy details of the legislation. But we're very excited about this effort because if you look at countries that have the best women's participation in the labor force. Iceland, a lot of Scandinavian countries, they really have a public education and care system that starts, in some cases, from infancy. And that it's not seen as a private family issue, but rather it's a public good, how we take care of children, not just starting when they're 5 years old. And so really, if women are to be a full part of society and the workforce, that is the ideal framework. Now, we're a long ways from that, but I think that's the
Something
vision
a goal.
for women, and not just
towards.
women, it affects, children's educational levels and success, community economic health, so it's very far-reaching impact.
Absolutely.
But so we look forward to supporting that and supporting local efforts to mobilize and move forward that legislation, while at the same time pushing for small steps, such as funding gateway cities' plans to implement universal pre-K.
Great. Well, wonderful. We're definitely going to keep working on that one, because we know it's not just for the families, but it also the children's education. The data definitely supports that. When they enter school at a younger age, instead of 5 or 6 years old. Because kindergarten is not even mandatory. Kindergarten is still optional.
I remember learning last year too, when I was learning about this legislation for universal pre-K, that if you rethink K through 12 and think of it as pre-K through 12, we still require those preschool teachers to have a degree, to attend higher ed, to have the certifications, and their starting salary in a private daycare is $32,000. By including them in pre-K through 12 education, their starting salaries would be $52,000 to more reflect their education levels, and they can be unionized. So all the things that then goes to support these predominantly women who go to school to do this, just more legitimizes and lends strength to their to what they went to school for, and that profession.
The profession.
Exactly.
Education of young children.
Exactly. That's
Right, it's not
the
just
thought.
daycare. A lot of people think that
Exactly.
it'll just be more of a daycare setting. This is pre-K, so they're already going to be in
Absolutely.
the school system.
Absolutely.
So they're going to be learning, so they won't come in at kindergarten, or like you said, even later,
even
and
first
they'll be
grade.
behind. They'll be ready with their peers whose parents can currently pay for it.
And that, one of the biggest predictors of children's, what is the first grade reading level is such a predictor of later academic success.
Absolutely.
One of the biggest predictors of that is preschool.
Absolutely.
And the data also show that kids in Fall River and New Bedford are attending preschool at a much lower rate than the state average, and all, then have a lower reading level at the first grade level. So there's really important regional educational and economic benefits from doing that.
Absolutely, as well as for the future, long term. Great, well, thank you. Jordan, can you talk about the menstrual access?
Yes, I will. So for anybody that's been following the YWCA Girls Exclusive Program, we are really moving full steam ahead with their advocacy project called Justice Flow. And their project, focused specifically right now in New Bedford, is to increase access to menstrual hygiene products in bathrooms in middle and, in the 3 middle schools in New Bedford and the public high school. And things are going really well. We've had so much support from the team we're working with at Leadership South Coast, as well as the New Bedford Public Schools and Superintendent Anderson. So while we are very thrilled at our local success, the girls are also very aware and excited about the statewide legislation called the I Am Bill, the menstrual increasing access to menstrual products. So this is the act to increase access to disposable menstrual products in prisons, homeless shelters, and public schools. And so what this bill then would do is that it would provide free access to menstrual hygiene products in public schools grades 6 through 12. There is likely going to be an amendment to include elementary schools as students are menstruating younger and younger. The average age typically 9 to 10 years old. And in public schools, what's very important is that it needs to be in non-stigmatized places. So the thing that the girls are really focusing on right now in New Bedford is getting pads and tampons out of the nurse's station and into bathrooms, so that they're not losing more class time. They're not, and also that period is treated as a medical condition, right? That this is just a part of their daily hygiene. So just to use the bathroom like anybody else does. And then the bill would also expand access to homeless shelters and prisons and county jails. So in both of those situations as well, you have instances where women are making makeshift, unhygienic products as a way to have an alternative solution to this. And so this would make sure that everybody has access.
Great. Well, thank you for letting us know about that. But this has really been eye-opening for a lot of people. This, I think, it's sparked a lot of conversation. I think it's a topic that doesn't really get talked about a lot, and I've heard it spoken about in many different groups, not just by women, but by men, older people, younger people. You know, I think most of us, I'm sure we can all remember being 11 and 12 and sitting at school, and, you know, the embarrassment that you might feel, or when you have to go to the restroom, and just being able to go. As well as with a lot of the older women too that have, you know, been really excited about this topic and want to talk about it, you know, even more, and how we can make this available, and how New Bedford can be at the forefront, you know, of this, and bring this on to, you know, other schools.
Girl-led, I think it's
girl-led. This was their idea. They want,
It's become very intergenerational. You're right, because we have women who are reaching out to us that are premenopausal and running into these issues as well, saying, look at this bathroom. There's no garbage can for me to dispose of the products. Like, how am I supposed to do this? Or there's no soap, or there's no paper towels. Like, all these things that are about our daily hygienic needs that aren't being addressed if people aren't checking their bathrooms and seeing what people need. And I think what's really interesting is we've been talking with the girls about dignity and how this bill relates so much to them not having to compromise their dignity, to feel embarrassed, to feel ashamed, to stay home, to not as fully participate because they don't have access to menstrual hygiene products. And all of a sudden, it's getting them, I mean, they're definitely more empowered each day that we work on this project. And I think, and women of any age can relate to that feeling of not wanting to compromise their dignity because they do not have access to products.
That comment you made about the educational impact really stuck out to me. I was reading about this in the paper, and there was a quote from one of the girls, who I think was 12, and she said that being from a low-income family, it's very much a possibility that if the school doesn't provide menstrual hygiene products, she may have to stay home and miss school. And it really was shocking to me to see that in 2019 that is something that youth are facing. And so if we can include menstrual hygiene products in the bathroom for everyone, like you're saying, it's just a part of life. It shouldn't be in the nurse's station. It should be accessible to everyone. And that's a simple barrier to remove to making sure that people are able to attend school.
Absolutely right. A right to equal educational opportunities. And so the bill right now at the State House is actually through public health. So again, thinking of these multiple avenues where menstruation affects the lives of women, girls, and other menstruating people, and just really trying to make sure that they have access to their menstrual hygiene needs. And we've been told, when I was growing up, I was just always prepared. I was always, I always had my bag packed. I mean, good for you, but people do have accidents, or the girls that we work with, or the premenopausal women that we talk to. This can happen at any time. And if you're not in a position that you're comfortable enough to ask the person in the restroom with you, or if you're alone, let's not have them compromise their dignity and just have the stuff that they need.
And to participate, some of us said that you want to participate in after-school sports or activities, as well as, the educational access. And to stay home, that it's not covered, if you're on, public assistance was the other piece, that you can buy, again, certain things, but then something like that, is not covered, which, I wasn't aware of, either, that, they can't use any of those dollars. Some of them resorting to, other methods that are not hygienic and are not healthy, as well, or not having access to the bathroom, and then you're not using, changing anything all day long, which is not healthy either. So a piece of this, which is exciting, that Jordan and the girls are doing, and that peer-to-peer model too, as well as educating, not only their peers, but, the faculty, the staff, because I think sometimes we all forget that, we need to use the restroom at certain times, and just having that access and making sure that, everybody's doing that and getting back to focusing on education. But it's really, really important. And
it's great to know that New Bedford in our county is really kind of being a leader, because then we have this statewide IM bill that expands it beyond schools to what it said, prisons, homeless shelters, so that women and people who menstruate can have access as well.
Right.
And I think that's great. That's something we really can celebrate. And so just kudos to you, the girls you work with, Leadership South Coast.
Right.
I know that they picked us. That I stood in front of a room of adults and talked about periods and menstruation, and the girls did the same in front of the mayor of New Bedford and the superintendent, the school committee, all men except one woman. So we've really had such a positive response, and I think this is that first step, because now we do need to collect data, and that's a big way that going to Women's Advocacy Day is such an important part of that for the women and girls there to share their stories about barriers to access. And and now from Women's Advocacy Day, though, part of where that advocacy coordinator can come in is how we need to collect data. For all of these legislative priorities, the more data you have, the quantitative and qualitative data. So we do have a survey for the menstrual access bill that we have a print copy, and we also have a Google form that people can fill out. And you can fill it out on behalf of someone if they're standing in front of you. So now we've been in the schools. Next step is to go to homeless shelters and to go and see if we can talk to women or formerly incarcerated women or women in the county jail and things like that. So, because some county jails provide, but not all do. Some schools provide this, but not all do. So this would standardize it across the state.
Right, and an exciting piece too, Jordan presented at the Youth Alliance meeting for Greater New Bedford, last week, and that point about, think about your own restroom in your facility or in your office or your home, is it accessible, for anybody? And you could see people thinking like, and part of what the girls are collecting now is for, summer's coming, school vacations, if someone that they can say, Jordan, can you help me out for the weekend? They can have a little to-go pack. So the girls are collecting, and they're going to be delivering to the 26, I believe it's 26 organizations, so that they're ready, for the summer. So that, because why should girls miss out on swimming and some of the other summer programming that they could be doing, so that they'll have that. But it's interesting to think of, we're serving youth, in out of school hours. Are we, still prepared for them with summer, coming up as well? So it's great. It's a great project.
Is the drive ongoing? Can people still contribute? Want to tell us how?
Yes. So people can make donations to the YWCA Standish House. I say that right? At 20 South 6th Street in New Bedford. We're open 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And there, you can walk through the front door, and our receptionist is often there to greet you, and I can come down, or someone can come down to pick up your donation. And we have already collected so many boxes, right? It's filling
which is really
up.
Wonderful.
It's really great to see. And we also welcome monetary donations. If you can't make it down to the Standish House, we can do the shopping for you. We already are doing it, right? We already keep a supply of pads and tampons at Keith and at our other programs. So this just keeps adding to that. And I should say, the girls use them. Right, so they're definitely using them and taking them home if they need them. We also, this was asked by a few people, if our interest in more eco-feminist and alternative options. And while that's not something that we're necessarily going to promote with our middle school students, we're definitely accepting them and having them as options as well. So if anybody wanted to donate Diva cups, please know those are all welcome. Right. But we're just, we've got to more talk with the girls.
Do some training on that first with the girls.
Right. But
before that. A shout out about the homeless shelter issue. So I know that there's an event coming up in Fall River. Hearts of Hope is a nonprofit in Fall River run by Alicia and Lucy Vittorino, and they're partnering with Dunny's restaurant and Dunny's Bar and Saloon, and they're doing an event. It's a third annual Pints for Pads, and I don't remember the date offhand, but you can look it up online. Maybe when this is posted, if it's posted online, we can put the link. But that is really great, and accepting donations as well as actual menstrual products at the event.
That's
so
nice.
Because the Vittorino sisters recognize that a lot of women and people who menstruate who are experiencing homelessness, that is something that is usually not donated. People
Right.
don't think to donate feminine hygiene menstrual products. So
Right.
that event is coming up. I think it's like in 3 weeks, and Jenny's has been really great that they've been hosting it each year. And I've attended in the past. It's been a really nice event. And also I think is helping break stigma that I know I felt when I was in school, and it really makes me happy to see that stigma around menstruation is being like broken down year by year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Exactly.
I never thought this is where my career would take me. I'm talking about it all the time now.
No, hot topic.
And we do have a fundraiser on Monday night, actually. Monday, April 22nd at BCC in New Bedford, where we'll be showing the Oscar-winning documentary Period, End of Sentence, though that film focuses on menstrual hygiene in India, I think the tagline is still applicable here, where that a period should end a sentence, not a girl's education. And things we can apply to it, like not a girl's opportunity to access after-school activities and all those things. So if anyone's interested, they can come and view the movie, and Mass Now is coming down from Boston to lead us in a consciousness-raising event.
Nice.
So about the menstrual access bill, and it's free admission with a box of pads or tampons.
That's great, great. So at the end of the show, you'll see the information on the website to learn more about the Advocacy Day. Jordan and Val, every year we do some trainings, so about all the issues that we're talking about, that will all be available to go over it. We do a couple of workshops. We usually do one in the evening, we usually do a lunchtime one, in the morning one, to go over all of that so people are prepared, to go up. And we do groups, and everything is for free. We provide food, bus transportation.
People, organizations and neighborhood groups can request a training if you want to organize some people to take action on these issues, and potentially also go to the Women's Advocacy Day at the State House.
Right, but last year we did that quite a bit. We went to schools, we went to businesses, as well, if you have a group already there. So that's a little bit easier too. So we'll be anytime now ready to do that, because it's coming up in about a month too. So final thoughts that you want to leave our viewers with?
Thank you to Dartmouth Community Media for this opportunity. This is really great. I'm really excited to share about the different parties we talked about, and hopefully get some more community members involved.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess my closing statement would be, when I first did this 3 years ago, I went to the State House 8 months pregnant. Anyone can do it.
A lot of walking, comfortable shoes.
Really, it's a really fun day and a great experience in a way. Like, please, you might be scared or intimidated. Like, please don't be. Once you get up there, you're just surrounded with such a great community of women, and it's a good reminder, right? These are our public servants. They work for us, and they want to hear what we have to say. So please consider coming.
Yes.
If they don't hear from you, then you have less to criticize them for, that they're not doing what you want them to. So,
That's very true.
That's true.
so it's our job to make sure they know what we think is important.
Right, it's really important, because they want to hear those voices. They do pay attention, because I was watching last year and the last several years. They're writing it down. I remember my first year I went by myself. Then every year we've added, more and more.
You were
we
the
have,
pioneer
as,
out
and I was nervous myself the first time that you do it, because I think everybody gets a little intimidated that you're talking to the elected officials.
They're very welcoming.
But they're really excited and happy to see their constituents coming in, talking about the issues. They really listen, and they make the time. Sometimes they are busy and they get called out. But, and talking, even if we're talking with a staff person or an aide, and they are, very, very important too, because they have their ear. They're, providing the information and the data, but the stories, like listening to the girls or listening to the, the women that we're bringing up, and hearing, the stories about how this bill affects them, not just the, the nuts and bolts of it, but how this really affects your everyday life. And they really need to hear those stories, and only, our viewers, can provide that. We can help you with the rest, but they need to hear your stories. They don't want to hear us telling your story.
Right.
Is really, really important. So thank you all for being
Thank you.
here
Yes,
today.
Gail.
We're really excited. So our next time we will actually be at the State House. The one time of year we go off the set. So we'll see you all up there, and hopefully we'll get you, on camera as well, and the groups, and all the commissions, as well as the Mass Commission and our legislators on camera for the Women's Advocacy Day. So thank you again, and thank you for watching Voices of Women.